body was really slowing down. I was fighting against my body. Don't play with it, don't be dishonest. Hi, my name is Chico and I'm a Fibro warrior, and I wanted to share with you about my diagnosis. It's fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. So the reason why I'm sharing this, I've received questions about fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, and how to cope from Fibro warriors. It's for educational purposes and also to connect with either other Fibro warriors or people who are looking to learn more about fibromyalgia. So I was diagnosed in 2016, and the diagnosis was not easy. And what I mean by this is that it took me 3 years to actually put a name to what I was experiencing. So 3 years prior to that, I had been experiencing numerous symptoms, which initially I thought were due to an underactive thyroid, hypothyroidism, which I was previously diagnosed with, which was years ago when I was in my early 20s. So the symptoms that I was experiencing at the time, they were a little bit more heightened, but I thought that it was just my underactive thyroid symptoms over reacting, or I was feeling worse than I usually feel. So what I started to do was just to pay attention to my symptoms, and some of the symptoms that I was experiencing were feeling extra cold during the winters, up to the point that it felt like cold was penetrating through like my bones, especially in my feet, like my ankles, and sometimes like I'd feel it like in my wrists, or in my wrist as well, as though something was like piercing through, that was like quite sharp. And I also started to feel lethargic, in a way that I was feeling more exhausted, more than usual, more than my normal symptoms of an underactive thyroid. I persevered through the first year because I thought, oh, maybe it's just exhaustion through to just overworking and just being busy, and it's normal just to go through this process during the winter period. Later on, I started to go for, usually I'd receive like regular tests anyway, just to check that my thyroid functions through the blood tests were normal. But then I would persistently go and just to check, just to make sure that everything was okay. For the 3 years, I went to my general practitioner, which is a primary doctor in the US. One of the things that he identified was that I could be suffering from arthritis, and I was in a panic. I could say, yeah, deeply saddened, but I also thought I was too young at the time to be diagnosed with something like this. I assumed it was only people who were older, or in their senior years, that experienced symptoms like this. So after the diagnosis of, well, the assumption that it might be arthritis, I still persevered to go to my primary doctor to find out what was wrong. And then he eventually informed me that it could be gluten intolerance. Okay, so I went through various tests. And one of the reasons why it felt like it might be gluten intolerance was that I was experiencing, remember I mentioned that I was feeling lethargic. I was also experiencing as though like my legs were swelling up, my stomach was tense more than usual. I'd experienced like numerous stomach issues from as far back as I could remember, like from the age of 8 years old. But they seemed to be like more persistent. And even as somebody suffering from underactive thyroid, you also do tend to experience like stomach issues, feeling weak, and just feeling fatigued. So as a result of my doctor identifying that it was gluten intolerance, I started to eliminate gluten from my diet to monitor what that experience would be like, to see if I could start to feel better. And gradually, it didn't happen overnight, but gradually I could tell the difference. I could sense that I was starting to feel better. My legs weren't swelling up as much as they used to do, and my stomach wasn't feeling as severe. So it became a venture where I was also monitoring every type of food and ingredients that were put in the food, just to make sure that I wasn't reacting to other types of foods as well. So that was my process, but I wasn't fully satisfied because I still felt as though something was wrong, and I wasn't coming to something definitive. I wanted to find out what was the root cause of what was making me feel this way. I wanted to get to the root cause rather than to be dependent on medication, chemicals. I'm not very keen on chemicals. I try and avoid as much as possible. Obviously, there's circumstances where it's a must. You have to in order to get better. Moving on to finding out about the actual diagnosis. So 3 years in, I started to experience, it was during winter again. Let me go back. So what I'd usually feel like during winter was I'd start to feel like my body was really slowing down. I was fighting against my body. For instance, I was very active. I like going out for like long walks, going for hikes, going for jogging, and I'd find that just walking uphill or walking up an incline, I'd be out of breath. I'd feel like I need to sit down. I would struggle walking up the stairs. And at work, I also was active where during like I'm going into different like meetings or going for lunch, I would use the opportunity when I could. Lunch wasn't often. When I could, that's my own doing. When I could, I would run up the stairs or I'd walk up the stairs rather than take the lift or elevator, wherever you are in the world, what you may call it. And so I'd walk up the stairs or jog up the stairs, and I'd find that that was a struggle. Then I had to avoid using stairs. I'll take the lift. Then I had to also avoid walking up inclines. There were some places where I couldn't avoid it because I had no option in terms of like getting back home. There was no option for me. So it became a real struggle, and I just knew that something wasn't right. But still, there was nothing that the doctors could identify was actually wrong with me. Where it became something which was like really a struggle was I didn't even know myself. It's that my colleagues started to identify that something was wrong with me. And at the time, I thought I was exhausted from work, again, overworking. It had been a hectic period during the summer period going into fall and winter. It was just being like on the go, and I was used to that. I can't say that I was awfully stressed because I thrived in that environment. But what I started to notice during the winter time, I thought it was just seasonal flu, but I started to feel really sick, more beyond what flu symptoms felt like. And I was still pushing through going to work, up to the point that my two colleagues came up to me and said I didn't look well. It looked like I looked ghostly, and also they asked me if I had the flu. And that's when it clicked in my mind, thinking I actually need to go to the doctor again just to find out like what's wrong with me. So from that point on, what felt like a flu escalated into feeling really extra cold in the office. When I was in the office, I had to get like an extra heater to put like close to me, close to like my desk, because I couldn't cope with like the cold all of a sudden. Then again, I started to slow down in terms of I was somebody who would wake up in the morning, early in the morning, be the first one in the office because that's how I like to get my morning started before everybody got in. I wanted to be like sorted. But what I started to notice was that I couldn't get into work. Like, for example, at 8 o'clock, it got to 10 o'clock, then it was 12 o'clock. And still, there was something in me that didn't notice it immediately. I just thought I was exhausted from work. Then gradually, as the pain in my body started to occur more frequently, which I didn't know at the time was chronic pain, then that's when it dawned on me that there was something more serious going on. And my symptoms, feeling like flu-like, feeling lethargic, feeling really exhausted, never improved from that point on. The pain became more severe to the point that I was struggling every day. And I also started doing research. I can't even remember like how far back, probably in maybe 2 years and a half in, I started to do research to find out what type of the symptoms I was experiencing. Also looking for specialist doctors as well, who could actually look at the root cause of what I was experiencing or what I was suffering from. So in the back of my mind, I still felt like I was suffering from arthritis, but it wasn't a definitive because there wasn't an actual test that the only thing that I was informed from was that from my doctor was that I could be suffering from arthritis, and that was it. And the other thing was the gluten intolerance, and already I had an underactive thyroid. So I looked into specialist doctors. If you can recall, I mentioned that I wanted to get to the root cause of what was happening with me in order to be able to alleviate my symptoms, also to just put a name to it. So initially I went to the hospital. I was referred for my GP, the primary doctor, to go to the hospital. And in the hospital, I went to an arthritis department, I believe it is, or under some other guise, where they treat patients with suffering from like arthritis. The first time I went there, I went through various tests, blood tests, scans, you name it, but they didn't really find anything at all. Then I went to other numerous doctors in the US, repeated the same process, then came back again to the UK, and I found a specialist hospital in London that specialized in chronic conditions. Actually, before I even found this hospital, I had been informed when I came back from the US visiting family. I went back to the same hospital again, and that's when the specialist doctor in the arthritis department identified that I had fibromyalgia and that I was suffering from chronic fatigue syndrome. And how he was able to assess that, which most people are curious about, so he was able to identify pressure points on my body. I can't remember how many pressure points, but over 8, let me say. I experienced all those pressure points, which I didn't even know. And the pain as he was touching and pressing those pressure points, it was severe. And I didn't even know to the extent or magnitude of that pain. So everywhere I was taking that, yes, I felt like severe pain. And that's how he was able to identify that I was suffering from fibromyalgia, as that's one of the assessments that I do for people suffering from with fibromyalgia. And then there's also a process of like elimination of other conditions. And that's the experience I was going through in them trying to determine what I could be experiencing or suffering from. So through all of this, that's how when I got a name put to it, I was given a mild medication, which is like acts as an antidepressant, but for people who suffer from severe chronic pain, what it does is that it acts like as a muscle relaxant. In the beginning, I was a bit hesitant because I didn't really want to depend on like medication. But what the doctor did was reassure me and said that it was on a mild form, and it was something that I would need in order to start healing initially. So I put my hands up and I decided to take it because the pain was excruciating. I can't even describe the magnitude of it at the time. And as a result of getting a name to my diagnosis, then I found this hospital because I, again, was looking for something that was more holistic, a natural pathway, in that somebody could be able to identify what the root cause was with me in terms of like the disease that I had. So that I could start a process of elimination. And then prior to that, I was also detoxing. I went like on a 6-month detox program just to try and purify, get rid of any like impurities like in my body, not knowing that that was also beneficial for me at the time. So as a result of finding this hospital, they also confirmed that, and it was a referral through my general practitioner. The specialist there also confirmed that I had fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. And what really hit me hard was discovering that this was an incurable condition. And it took me a long time to accept it. But aside from that, what was beneficial is what I was looking for, is that they had integrated healthcare. And what this included was rehabilitation. So there was like physiotherapists, occupational therapists, nutritionists who could assist. And the rehabilitation program was like a 2-year program where it also included like group therapy. And the group therapy was mainly about learning how to come to acceptance, learn more about the condition, and also learn how to slow down pace instead of trying to do everything all at once. And we also had exercises that we were given to monitor every single activity that we were undertaking in our daily activities in our personal life, so that we could monitor and prioritize what was essential. So to minimize the chronic pain, and then to also minimize what was this like up and down process, where if you're suffering from severe chronic fatigue syndrome, you know what this feels like. You feel energetic at times, but when you undertake an activity which you think you can't do at the time, you crash. So it was like a crash and burn process, where in the beginning it was really hard for me to adjust to slowing down, to reach a level of acceptance that I couldn't do certain activities, even the basics of just cleaning my home, my whole entire home as I was used to. And I would clean it all, and then I would crash, or I wouldn't even be able to at times be able to clean it all because the pain was so severe to the point that I couldn't do anything. So this is where I will stop, because I just wanted to share with you how I reached the diagnosis, and also the specialist area of the contact that I made with a specialist hospital. And why I'm sharing this with you is that you may be going through a process where you're going through trying to find a diagnosis of what you're experiencing.